afternoon, Ibu Halina. This is Rachana.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good,
Fine,
good.
thanks. And how
Good
are
to see you.
Yeah.
Yes, so we'll wait for a few more minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody from the OECD.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, in Indonesia.
Good
Afternoon. How are you?
Kari Baiti, good afternoon. Happy to see you.
Good afternoon, and happy to see you too.
Yeah, looking forward to the Pacific experience. We are very interested.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will be interesting.
Yes,
Thank you.
definitely. Yeah. So we will wait for a few more minutes. I'm just checking who else have come in. Okay. I think, so yeah, we'll start exactly in 2-3 minutes.
Do we have to put on our video or we during this?
It would be good, Karibaiti.
But is it necessary to put our video on or?
Maybe just when you're presenting?
Yeah, that's maybe better.
Okay, and I'm pleased to meet you. My name is Bernard Woods. I'm the moderator for this afternoon.
Nice to meet you, Bernard.
Nice to meet you. So just to say, time is very tight because we have to do the wrap up at the end of this session. So about maybe with 30 seconds left in your time slot, my face will come back on the screen. I'll be sharing the spotlight with you, and that's your cue that time is up. Apologies in advance for that.
That's all right. Thanks.
Thank you. So welcome attendees, welcome panelists to our fourth roundtable on localization of the SDGs. My name is Bernard Woods. I'm the Principal Director of the Department of Communications at the Asian Development Bank. And this is our last roundtable. I hope everybody's had a very fruitful set of discussions. And before we dive into this last roundtable, let's have a recap of what we've heard so far. So I'd like to turn to Christian Louis from DLOG, who will give us a brief recap of the past 3 days. Over to you, Christian.
Thanks, Bernard, and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So we started on Monday this week with the first session on multi-level governance, policy coherence, and institutional development. And localizing the SDGs requires new thinking, policy coherence and interdependence of sector policies, systems thinking, innovation, multi-stakeholder arrangements, among others. It's important to link and integrate clear decentralization processes, functional assignments, and resources in line with functions. Localizing SDGs is an iterative process from involvement of subnational governments in identifying priorities to developing strategies and implementation with full ownership of subnational governments. Localization must be an essential part of national SDG strategies. Voluntary subnational and local reviews are important contributors to voluntary national review processes. Political will, strong legal framework, good implementation strategy, robust local public institutions, platforms for multi-stakeholder coordination supports SDGs implementation and localization. There's a need for financing to support policy and institutional reform. So we come to our second panel of this week on financing for the SDGs at the subnational level. So significant amount of public spending and investment on key sectors related to the SDGs are undertaken by subnational governments. Enabling fiscal framework for SDGs financing needs to be put in place in many countries. Fiscal decentralization should be improved to better align responsibilities and resources and provide more fiscal space to subnational governments. Enhanced fiscal decentralization can also help attract private sector financing. So we had two country examples in the session, one from Kazakhstan. The integration of SDGs in national planning and budgeting processes was one of the topics. There's a very robust understanding about SDG-related financing need, and also the colleagues underlined the importance of diversifying funding sources. The second country example we learned about came from Mongolia, from the Orkhon province, and the legal framework for subnational government financing needs to be developed further to accommodate funding of projects from multiple sources, including the private sector. There is a need to strengthen financial architecture, local institutions and partnerships to unlock the flow of finance at the local level. For example, climate finance is available globally and nationally, but rarely reach the local levels. Data on subnational government finance, such as the one provided by the OECD UCLG World Observatory on subnational government finance and investment, are crucial for monitoring and reporting on localization of the Sustainable Development Goals. So yesterday on our third panel, we talked about data management and monitoring. So while state-run data systems often cannot collect data sets that are comprehensively disaggregated and granular, community-based monitoring systems have been proven to be capable of collecting such granular data. State-run data systems should hence be complemented by data from civil society organizations and community-based monitoring systems. Emerging complexity of data ecosystems needs some form of governance, for example, standards or structures, to allow the alignment of official and non-official data sources. An example that we learned about were the Philippines, where the community-based monitoring system uses official definitions and standards of the national statistical system. There's a need for regional and global exchange of data and information and mutual access to databases. In Asia and the Pacific, such collaboration has been taking place through common data formats, for example, the ADB's data system. The ADB has also been supporting Thailand, Cambodia, and the Pacific Islands to use such data to measure the SDGs. Publicly available data sets, ideally equipped with visualizations tools like the OECD example of SDG indicators, facilitate exchange between stakeholders. So today in panel 4, we will talk about multi-stakeholder engagement and partnerships. Back to you, Bernhard.
Great. Thank you very much for that recap, Christian. So we can see the trajectory of the panels and how we're moving to the fourth one. Of course, we're talking about localization. Localization can't be done alone. It requires engagement of different stakeholders. It requires working in partnership, and this has to be informed by knowledge. So we have the panel which will help us explore this. Let me briefly introduce the three panelists. We're going to hear first from Director Shim from the United Nations Project Office on Governance. This is part of UNDESA, and really has been focusing on strengthening public administration capacities in developing member countries, states, to advance the SDGs. So he's going to start by telling us about this capacity development support, the kind of research they do, policy outreach, and communications. So that will start off our panelists. Then we'll turn to look at Indonesia. So we'll hear from Ibu Harlina. She's Director General of the Economic Development and Investment of Village Disadvantaged Regions and Transmigration. And for the Indonesian experience, Ibu Harlina is going to talk about SDG acceleration through a variety of channels, but in particular through the Social Innovation Program. So we'll look at the Indonesian experience for localization, again, multi-stakeholder engagement, partnership, knowledge. Finally, we're going to turn to the Pacific and hear an example from the Pacific. For that, we have Ms. Tauba. She's the Regional Director for the Commonwealth Local Government Forum. And she's going to close the panel by talking about the sustainable urban resource management approach that's being taken, which is a great example of localization in the Pacific. So three panelists kind of starting from the high level, the macro picture with the United Nations, moving to the on-the-ground examples from Indonesia and then the Pacific. And then I'll finally turn to our Director General of our Sustainable Development and Climate Change Program to give us some closing remarks. So let me just, before we dive in, let me just read out the webinar house rules for this. Time is very tight. We know time is precious for everybody, so we'll follow strictly 10 minutes for each presentation. And we'll have a Q&A session. So maybe if you can write your comments in the Q&A box, giving us your name and the organization. If you have a comment question for a specific panelist, please indicate them. Keep them straightforward and short. And we apologize in advance if we can't get to all the questions due to the time, but we will get back to you. We'll ask the panelists to respond to your questions. So those are the house rules. Now let's start the panel. And Director Shim, I'd like to turn to you first. Thank you. Director Shim, I think you're still on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Woods. Good morning and afternoon to all the distinguished participants. It is my great pleasure to be here today to speak with you on UNPOG's capacity development support for the member states for localizing SDGs in Asia and the Pacific. Firstly, please allow me to introduce briefly about UNPOG and its mandates. UNPOG was established in 2006 as part of the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government of UNDESA. Its principal mission is to strengthen the public governance capacities of developing the member states in Asia and the Pacific and beyond to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. UNPOG's work program focuses on three priority areas: One is strengthening public institutions. Two is innovating public services. Three is engaging whole societies to ensure that no one is left behind. The implementation of UNPOG activities is clustered on the three components. One is capacity development, two is research and policy analysis, and three is networking and outreach. Next slide. UNPOG follows a holistic and integrated approach to capacity development activities. UNPOG's capacity development approach includes capacity needs assessment and the demands expressed by the participants of our various activities through the post-event evaluation survey. Capacity development strategies are then defined to support the design and the implementation of a roadmap for strengthening institutions and the capacities to develop, implement, monitor, and evaluate the policies and services to implement the SDGs. This is defined through research activities. The action plan is designed to clarify the rationale of the proposed capacity development strategies. Capacity development strategies are implemented through advisory service, workshops, training, symposia, and others. Implicit in the capacity development strategy is impact assessment and follow-up strategy to ensure sustained support to the member states. UNPOG collaborates with other UN agencies and international organizations in the region to support capacity development of the member states. Next. In 2020, we converted all our activities online due to COVID-19. This year also, we are delivering capacity development activities through online methods. We continued to offer capacity development activities in governance and public administration, localizing SDGs, disaster risk reduction, e-government, ICTs, and frontier technologies, and inclusion of vulnerable groups. Governance capacity development session series on strengthening public governance and accelerating innovation to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is going on. Please visit our website to join the series. Under the general guidance of DPIDG UNDESA, we have developed 3 training toolkits as a part of the curriculum on governance for the Sustainable Development Goals under the guidance of DPIDG UNDESA. Effective national to local public governance for SDG implementation is the first one. The second is risk-informed governance and innovative technology for DRR. The last one is social inclusion of vulnerable groups. These 3 toolkits are related to localizing SDGs in one way or another. These toolkits are available on the UNPAN website. The toolkit on effective national to local public governance for SDG implementation is related to multiple stakeholder engagement, partnership, multi-level governance, policy coherence, institutional development and monitoring, evaluation, and reporting on SDG localization. Module 2.4 of the training toolkit covers the multi-stakeholder engagement for localizing the SDGs. The module provides approaches and tools for strengthening stakeholder engagement for localizing the SDGs, a framework for planning and assessing quality engagement to localize the SDGs. The framework comprises of 4 dimensions of engagement and a set of indicators for assessment. The framework proposes that, particularly in the context of the SDG, engagement must be purposeful with clearly articulated objectives, methodologies, dedicated resources, and feedback mechanisms for refinement. Second, it highlights the importance of ensuring inclusive processes by promoting stakeholder mapping, analysis, and the use of methods that enable the integration of multiple perspectives including those often left behind. Third, the framework points to ways in which engagement can be transformative. Using methodologies that enable collaboration across different groups with diverse perspectives by integrating the three dimensions of sustainable development and by motivating participation through the whole of society approach. First, it encourages engagement to be proactive by assimilating engagement planning into processes of implementation and delivery. By making timely and accessible information available to stakeholders and by prioritizing stakeholder preferences with respect to mediums of participation. Broadly speaking, 4 levels of stakeholder engagement can be a useful framework for categorizing a range of approaches for engaging stakeholder groups in the implementation and the review of the 2030 agenda. These 4 levels include 1 is inform, 2 is consult, 3 is involve, and 4 is collaborate. A 5th level of engagement, empower, would demand further adaptation. The diagram provides a brief description of each level. Next, the toolkit also provides an approach to setting up a stakeholder engagement plan. This slide describes the different components for a stakeholder engagement strategy for implementing the SDGs at the national and the local level. This template provides how to map stakeholders as a part of the stakeholder engagement strategy. This template can be used to frame the timeline for the stakeholder engagement process. This slide shows the draft budget template for stakeholder engagement. Policy development checklist can be considered to meet the citizens' needs. Next, I would like to share a case of stakeholder engagement in water solar energy from the Republic of Korea. K-Water improves the quality of people's lives by leading the government's policy to address climate change and expand renewable energy through sustainable water energy development. Stakeholder engagement in water solar energy was conducted by 1 is creation of a community participated practice sharing model. 2 is fact-checking and enhancing public relations through on-site programs. 3 is proactive coordination and collaboration to secure trust. 4 is transition to a design that reflects the local culture. I will be happy to answer if you have any questions. Thank you for your kind attention. Over to you.
Thank you, Director Shim. I have to say my thanks to you. You actually ended a minute before your scheduled time, which is fantastic, gives us some more time. I'm sure attendees will have questions and answers for you. So we've heard about the kind of the high level, some very interesting tools and approaches, engagement framework, engagement plan. Let's now go to the local level, if you will. Ibu Harlina, can you talk to us now about the experience from Indonesia? Over to you, Ibu Harlina.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Harlina, Director General of Economic Development and Investment of Village, Disadvantaged Region and Transmigration. The greeting for Bernard Watts, the distinguished panelists, Mr. Sim and Mrs. Karbaiti, and all participants. It is a pleasure to meet you all. I would like to first express my sincere gratitude for having me in this discussion. So in this opportunity, I would like to present about how the experiment of SIP, Social Innovation Platform, has been working in Indonesia. Please, next slide. Firstly, let me introduce you to the Ministry of Village Development of Disadvantaged Region and Transmigration of Republic of Indonesia. Our task is carrying out government's affairs in the field of village and rural development, empowerment of village communities, acceleration of development of disadvantaged region and transmigration to assist the President in organizing the state's governments. Currently, there are 74,961, which consisted disadvantaged region, national priority cluster of villages, Minister Priority Cluster of Villages, National Priority Cluster of Transmigration, and Priority Cluster of Transmigration Areas. And next, please. The village law. Next slide, please. Thank you. The village law number 6, 2014 on villages are regarded as the most progressive policy in the history of local government in Indonesia for 2 reasons. First, it established village authorities as responsible for the administration of village affairs, social and economic development, and the empowerment of villagers based on community initiative, customary law, and local tradition. And the second, it included the village fund policy, which allocated funding to village governments. In other words, the village government now has both the authority and resources necessary to govern its own affairs. Last year, our ministry provided our ministry endorsed Minister of Village Regulation number 13 2020 on the prioritization of village fund for SDGs, or widely known as the village level SDGs, or in Indonesia is the name SDGs Desa. And the next, please. To realize that the village level SDGs or SDGs Desa and accelerate the achievement of SDGs from the village level, Ministry of Village work with UNDP Indonesia in the following areas: social innovation platform, digital village program, alignment of village indicates to SDGs, and then advocacy and capacity building. This partnership of both Ministry of Village UNDP Indonesia is very important since achieving SDGs from the village level in the through localizing SDGs. Next, please. In implementing the village law number 6 of 2014, Indonesia has been community-driven development approaches. For example, the village level consultation processes and other participatory planning processes conducted to ensure accountability and transparent use of village fund. In Asia Pacific, Indonesia is amongst the early adopter of SIP approach, where it is piloted in 2 provinces that are Gorontalo and West Java. Indonesia is the only pilot country in Asia Pacific region where SIP is experimented with the national government, the highest level of Indonesian administration system. SIP will be able to support Indonesia and help complementing the existing community-driven approaches. Next slide. SIP will help the implementation of the existing community-driven development approaches by offering value added such as helping to discover hidden narrative in the community through deep listening phase. And the second, creating innovative spaces for community participation through co-creation with non-traditional stakeholders. And the third is SIP exercises a portfolio approach around 5 interconnected level of intervention. And next slide. When we are discussing about the empowerment of village and rural areas, it should be carried out by physical, economic, social, spiritual, environment aspect and implemented by various components. It's noteworthy that the 17 goals of the village level SDGs partnership for the village development seek to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development of Indonesia's villages. This is how the grand narrative of partnership is conveyed into a context to attain the village level desa. Next. With scaling potential to support thousands of villages in Indonesia, we have to strengthen and expand the current efforts. these are the imperative action toward that. First, capacity building. This can be done through knowledge building to local institution, and then the train the village facilitator and village authorities. And the second, institutionalization. SIP need to demonstrate tangible result to village development so that it will be able to be replicated to other regions in Indonesia. And the third is digitalization. More than 70,000 villages across the archipelago in Indonesia. It is impossible to scale up approach SEP approach by only using manual process. And then the last slide, in conclusion, by experimenting SIP in Indonesia, we found out that first village superior product into SIP location are agriculture, fisheries, and tourism. Hence, it's able to answer the integrated planning challenges with a complex development process for villages and rural areas. And finally, SIP has impact in the planning of the village investment, and at last the result can be applied in villages, cooperation between village and cluster of villages. I think that all from me. If you have any question regarding this, I'm looking forward to hearing it, and thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Ibu Harlina, and thank you again for staying well within the 10 minutes allotted to you. I think these are some very interesting questions. When we think about localization, my goodness, over 74,000 villages that you have to think about localization, and the SIP providing a very interesting model of moving from engagement to actually interventions. So I'm sure we'll come back to you, Ibu, for the Q&A on that. So turning from Indonesia to the Pacific region, let's hear now from Ms. Taoba, and if you can talk us through I believe it's a SURM approach. Thank you. Over to you. Sorry, I think you're still on mute.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have been tasked to share with you what we are doing in the Pacific in relation to the topic of multi-stakeholders, engagement, partnership, and knowledge. But before I do that, for those who are not aware about CLGF, or the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, I want to briefly introduce my organization so you know why I am here. CLGF is the official organization representing local governments across the Commonwealth. It is a membership organization bringing together ministries of local government, national local government associations, and individual councils from across the Commonwealth. I'm based in Fiji, looking after CLGF Pacific office, and we are working with 10 member countries in the Pacific. The project that I will be discussing with you is on solid waste management, is in Nasinu, Fiji. The title of the project is Localizing the 2030 Agenda through a Sustainable Urban Resource Management Approach. The aim of the approach is to strengthen the capacities of Nasinu Town Council to implement the 2030 Agenda within the Sustainable Urban Resource Management. This is funded by UNESCAP and UN Habitat, and CLGF is contracted to implement it in Fiji. The project started in July 2019 and supposed to be completed in April 2021, but because of the COVID, it has been extended to August 2021. Can I go on to the second? What is the project covers? This project, first and foremost, aims to strengthen local processes for implementing the SDG by focusing on 3 mutually reinforcing capacity development streams. The first one is on participation, strengthening inclusive multi-stakeholders governance for the local level. The second one is on evidence, strengthening urban stakeholders' capacity to collect, analyze, and disseminate data aligned to SDG indicators and use it for more evidence-based decision-making. And the last one is on integration, systemic analysis for integrated planning and implementation. So the project is basically aims to assist National Town Council to put into operation the what and how of localizing SDG. Can I go on to the third PowerPoint? The key features. These are some of the key features of the project that I want to share with you. A small core group was established, and the members of that core group are CLGF as the chair, National Town Council representative, UNSCAP representative, and the Ministry of Local Government, who is responsible for local government in Fiji. Their role is to ensure a smooth implementation of the annual work plan through technical advice and coordination. The second feature is the multi-stakeholders coalition that was established. The multi-stakeholders coalition, also known as the MSC, was established after consultation with key stakeholders of National Town Council. The MSC in this project were given training, tools, methodology, and resources to enhance their capacity building in planning and implementing SDGs in an inclusive and participatory fashion, collect, analyze, and disseminate data in line with relevant SDG indicators, and adopt an integrated approach to localizing the SDG subset. There are surveys that were conducted to provide evidence for the MSC to make concrete decisions. This is on solid waste management in Nasinu. At the end of phase 1, a visioning workshop was conducted. The workshop provided the platform for the stakeholders to come together to diagnose the research findings and plan the way forward for National Town Council waste management. At the visioning workshop, the multi-stakeholders discuss and agree on a set of integrated solutions and potential pilot projects linked to SDG and the Ministry of Local Government and National Town Council plans and priority. The MSC used various planning tools that were provided to them to use to identify the best possible intervention for phase 2 of the project. Note that the project left it open to National Town Council to decide through their multi-stakeholders process which local plans to adapt and what concrete activities to implement. In this way, the project maximizes local ownership and ensure that National Town Council localize SDG in accordance with their priorities and capacities. Also notes that the multi-stakeholders platform continued to be utilized as the main platform of consultation throughout the implementation of this project. Can I go on to PowerPoint 4? So there are 2 phases of the project. The first phase is mainly focused on developing systems and training the MSC on planning tools. The second one is on the surveys that were conducted for evidence, and then decision making, plus developing the sustainable plan after the end of the project. The second phase is on capacity building to manage the resource recovery facility that came out from phase 1. Awareness raising about the project and learning about developing policies, processes to invest and stimulate local economies for growth and waste reduction in Nasinu. The 5th PowerPoint, please. What have we learned from the lessons from the project? Lessons learned so far from the project, it is important to recognize that the journey is just as important as the destination for this project. As I mentioned before, the project focuses on integrated processes such as participation, evidence, multi-stakeholders governance, and capacity building as predecessors to well-informed actions. The project opportunities to build Nasino Town Council and community member skills in acceptable local governance practices and procedures are equally as critical as the improvement to solid waste management in Nasino. The overall expectation of this project is to ensure a more bottom-up participatory approach that involves all stakeholders to work together with the municipality to deliver the SDG. Achieving that expectation is, however, dependent on the cooperation and commitment of all stakeholders. This includes the council, regulatory authorities, businesses, community groups, household, and individual citizens. So in summary, multi-stakeholders engagement is important for any project to be successful. However, good partnership is also an important ingredient. In that partnership, it must be supported by relevant data and capacity building to ensure decisions, activities are made and carried out properly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tawaba. I think you had perhaps one of the most important phrases of the workshop where you said the journey is as important as the destination. And really, when we're talking about engagement, about partnership, about knowledge, it's really about the journey, and those things help us towards the destination. So thank you very much for that and providing that example from the Pacific. So we've heard from all three panelists. We started with the very high level overarching from the UN about the tools and the techniques and the capacity building, policy dialogue. We heard from Indonesia about the SIP and how that innovation engagement is leading to a portfolio of interventions. And then we heard from also from the Pacific about really talking about a particular locality and working in that context. So let's hear from you. Thanks to our panelists, we have a robust amount of time for Q&A. So please post your questions to the chat box. Let us know who you are. Please keep your questions short and direct. And if you'd like to have a particular panelist answer them, please indicate that in the chat box. I think I can ask Christian for help with this also. Christian, let me know if we have any questions, or I can jump in with one of my own.
Yeah, thanks, Bernard. And there are already some questions coming in. And,
Great.
if you want, I can read out a first round.
Please.
And then we can jump in with your question and see what other questions are coming in. There's a question directed to Bokyun Shim,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
it's a question from Sim Workenu Ishatu. Sorry for my pronunciation. From Ethiopia, but who's currently studying in the Republic of Korea.
Yeah.
And he is asking, what practical challenge the Republic of Korea faced in attracting stakeholders in water solar energy? And is there any practical experience Korea could share with others?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Christian. Actually, when the K-Water agency, they started the solar energy project by making use of the drinking water source surface. There were many oppositions from the residents who drinks the water from the water source. So because the K-Water, they should have set up the barge on the water surface, drinking water surface, the water source surface, and they set up solar energy panels. So to create solar energy, the resident thought that it might be harmful to the drinking water by the facilities, so they opposed harshly to the making use of the drinking water source. Yeah, so the K water made use of the stakeholder engagement strategy. First, they the K-Water tried to show the evidence whether it is harmful or not by monitoring the environmental impact when it set up the facility. So we did the stakeholders, including the residents, they agreed to monitor the results of the small piloting for 8 years by engaging the research institutions for the environmental monitoring. But the result for 8 years, there was no harm. The residents understood, and also the K-Water engaged the residents to show around the facility by touring the facilities on the water surface. They directly they could feel what would be if it can be harmful. They so on-site visit, and also when they invested some of money, then they create practice by the generating the electricity. So they the residents could get benefits from the investment. So the higher more than the interest rate of a savings account. So the and also communicating progress and fact checking about the misinformation and the wrong information. So the K-Water could successfully overcome the opposition from residents, and the residents now they welcome the facility, and they want to invest more money to the facility. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Bokyeon, and for explaining how in this experience they overcome also the resistance and convinced through monitoring and research. I have another question I'd like to direct to Halina, and it's a question from Krishna Pathak from USAID Nepal. And she's asking, I'm curious to learn more about some good practices about the process, methodology, and mechanism to advance engagement in partnerships among the government, civil society, private sector, and how they collectively advance reforms, transformations, and generate and share knowledge among these stakeholders. I'm sure that all the speakers and panelists could answer this question, but I think it's interesting to hear from your perspective, Alina, from the government in Indonesia on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question, and I will answer that about the methodologies and how to we are cooperation with another institution. For the simple that when my minister is existed we have a several collaboration, not only regional governments, but also private sector and state-owned enterprise. And we are cooperation with international institution too, such as UNDP and then IFAD and then World Bank. And about the methodology, we are from the planning and then implementation, and after that we are evaluation about this program is to make sure that it run well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Halina, for explaining how you integrated also the different stakeholders. Bernard, for the moment, I'd like to hand over to you for your questions to our panelists, and then we can come back to me again.
Great. Thank you very much. So let me ask a question for all three panelists. So the SDGs, you know, there's 17 SDGs, but there's also underlying principles. And two of those principles, one, I think, is the kind of the interconnectedness, the integration that the SDGs bring. And the second is the principle of leave no one behind. So my question is, thinking of these two principles, how do those two principles influence your work on engagement, partnership, and knowledge? And maybe I can turn to Ms. Taoba first, then Ibu Harlina, and then end with Director Shim. So Ms. Taoba, again, the kind of the principles, integration, leave no one behind, how do those come out in your work?
One of the principle that you've talked about, leave no one behind, and you can see what we have done throughout the project. We have tried to include everybody that are part of that council. So these are the people who are making decision right from the beginning until the end. What we have given to them is, we know that there are different levels of understanding. So the project involves a lot of knowledge and capacity building right from the beginning until the end, so that they can be able to sit together with everybody and discuss what they want that can affect their situation in this project. So it involves leave no one behind by including everybody, and at the same time, the stakeholders are coming from all parts of so there is an interconnection between the different sectors of this project. I hope I understand, I answer your question.
Great, thank you very much, very interesting. Ibu Harlina, same question, kind of integrated, the integrated nature of the SDGs, leave no one behind. How do you find that comes out in the work in the SIP in Indonesia, for example?
Minister of Village, our minister endorsed about the Minister of Village Regulation number 13, 2020 in the prioritization of village fund of village level SDGs. So this is a guidance for the village governments to authority to use village fund for achieve of 70+1 in Indonesia, 70+1 goals SDGs.
Great, thank you very much for that. And Director Shim, same question for you. Integration, leave no one behind. How does that come out in your work?
Yeah, we UNPOG conducts, as I said before, we conduct capacity development activities and advisory services and research and analysis activity based on the needs assessment of customer countries. We conduct those activities, and in the activities we produce the toolkits to interconnect all the SDG goals and for the social inclusion. So we include not but not limited to building institutions at the national local levels to support the SDG implementation in an integrated, effective, transparent, accountable way. We also innovation for inclusive service delivery and opening innovation system to engage societies, including the poorest and the most vulnerable groups in designing, delivering, implementing policies for realizing SDGs, as well as designing and implementing effective partnerships. We are doing such kind of things. Over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. So same question, three quite different and insightful answers from our panelists on that. Christian, how are we doing on the Q&A? Do you want me to keep going or back to you?
Thanks, Bernard. Yeah, we are doing good. There are a lot of questions coming in, and apologies if we are not able to take up all of these questions. I also kindly ask our panelists if they see any question and can directly react on that. That might be helpful. If not, we try to come back later to the persons who were asking. I have a question from Fansiri Vinishagun. And this question I would like to direct to Kari Baiti Taoba. And the question is, please advise on the success indicators along the journey, how to convince the partnership of support if there is no success indicator yet until we come to the destination. So the question is related about how you measure success, and by doing that, convince other stakeholders to enter the partnership. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
So the question is, how do we measure success and how do we convince people to continue working with the project? One of the important things that I've kept on saying is that the decision that has been made is coming from the stakeholders. So it is the stakeholders themselves who are convinced on what they're doing. So that is why we thought it's very important that we have the stakeholders to make decisions throughout. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. Yeah, I think there could be an angle more specific about the kind of indicators, but I think this is something that also could be elaborated on a little bit afterwards if we are in contact with the asking person. I'd like to take up another question, Bernard, if you allow me, to Halina. And this question is, it's a question from Raghu Shrestha from Nepal. And the question is, can you share your experience in alignment of village indices to the SDGs? How do you align the different indices?
Please pardon.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Because
Yeah.
my yes, I'm sorry. Can you pardon to repeat again?
Yeah, no worries. The question is, how do you align the indices to measure SDGs across the villages? Are there any standards you use to have a uniform way of, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Actually, we have index for development of village. So if the village built with guidance, through guidance in SDGs, so the village can increase the develop of the village. The SDGs, I mean the index. I think that like that, Mr. Christian, we have index
Thank you very much.
to measure each village.
Thank you very much, Alina, and standardized index and ways of measuring. Thank you very much. I have another question for Bokyun, and it's a broad question, I have to say, but it's coming from a colleague from Liberia and West Africa, and he's asking what disadvantages and advantages stakeholder engagement has. I'm sure there's a lot of arguments for the advantages, but if there's anything you see critical or you'd like to highlight or to be care of, or to take care of, please.
Yes, the most the important advantage of the stakeholder engagement is, I think, we can gain trust from the stakeholders because when they are engaged, they can feel ownership for the policy or project. No matter how good the policy or project is, if they are not engaged, they cannot get ownership. So the trust, you cannot expect so much trust. And also the most challenging disadvantage is that when there are so many stakeholders, it can require a large time commitment. So it can preclude some participants from participating in every round, and also the stakeholder engagement can feel them expected. They can give some. It can give them higher expectation for the policy or project, but actually there is a limit to accommodate or the requests from the stakeholders. So when their requests or demands are not, we cannot meet the demands, they can get disappointed with the results. They can be more opposed to the policies. So the important thing is that honest talk and transparent communication is important with the stakeholders in the process. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Bokyun, and also for highlighting expectation management. And thank you for answering this question. Bernard, there are more questions coming in. Do you want me to go on, or do you want to jump in with other questions from your side?
Yes, this is my second of two questions. So let me turn to all three panelists. Tell us a little bit about your personal experience. So you've been working in localizing the SDGs. What's something that's been surprising to you, or something that's been unexpected in that work that you could share with us? So a little reflection on your personal experience. Maybe Director Shim, I can turn to you first, and then Mr. Talbot, and then finally Ibu Harlina. So first you, Director Shim, something surprising, unexpected that you've experienced in this work you've been doing on the localization of the SDGs.
Yeah, for the SDG localization, in the UNPOG, we developed training toolkits for that topic. So we make use of the toolkits in the capacity development activities, and also in the advisory service, we make use of the toolkit, especially, for example, the Laos, Lao PDR, they are now piloting one-door service center over 10 years, but it is not, now it is growing and it is developing, but there are some many challenges. So in the process, the local authorities, they set up the one-door service center. So we asked the developed countries to share the best practices with the Lao PDR. So in June, we will have a webinar for sharing our and their experiences and knowledge to accelerate the one-door service center project. So the local authorities in the Lao PDR, they can, I think, they can get help from the best practices in localizing SDGs, starting with the one-door service center. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. So same question, Ms. Talba. Anything surprising, unexpected in your work with localizing the SDGs in Fiji?
Yeah, there's so many unexpected things that we found out when we were doing the project. The project is ongoing now. We haven't completed that. But one of the main reason for establishing that project is to help Nasino to reduce the amount of waste that the people are providing. So when we include these stakeholders to think about how are we going to help National Council to reduce that waste, because it's taking up a lot of the money that National is pouring into that issue. So when we include them, it's surprising because we thought that they are the main causes of the problem. But when they understand the problems that are involved in this project, they all come up and are ready to help. So they establish what they think will help the process of reducing the waste by establishing the resource recovery facility that they manage themselves. And that is what is surprising to me, to know that if you involve people, if you partner with them, they will be able to give you a lot in return. I hope I answered that.
Thank you. So Ibu Harlina, same question. Anything, the work with the SIP in villages in Indonesia, anything surprising, unexpected for you coming out of that?
Thank you. It's very surprising, yeah. In Indonesia, we have more than 70,000 villages across the archipelago. So many surprising it's villages. And I think the villagers are so spirited in building and development the villages, even in the pandemics. And then they develop village variety products. They always have a good spirit to build that.
Great. Thank you very much, all three panelists. Back to you, Christian.
Thank you very much, Bernard. I have a question from Frank Thomas from the ADB, and it's a question to Ibu Harlina, and I think you already touched the topic in your answer now. It's related to the question on leaving no one behind, also Bernard asks. But Harlina, the question is, what initiatives has your ministry taken in the past year for COVID-19 recovery at subnational level, especially within the key social sectors like education and health?
our effort?
In national policy to pandemic, we have in Indonesia called Satgas COVID, and in our minister for village fund, we can use the village fund for to buy everything about tools to medicine or supplement, and all about to prevent about COVID. And then we have makes release a policy too to make village about in Indonesia, village free COVID, village free COVID in Indonesia, free COVID village.
Thank you very much, Halina.
Okay.
I have another question to Bokyun, and this is from Kuntu Melati from the Stockholm Environment Institute. And Kuntu is asking, when you mention capacity building and strengthening public governance, do you also work on ensuring policy coherence in national local level, especially with the multi-stakeholder platform might have competing interests or different priorities or indicators? And then second question within that question is, maybe you could explain the toolkit that you mentioned on SDG goals and social inclusion. So Bokyun, over to you.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Where is the? Yeah. Where is the question? Who is the?
It's a question from Kuntu Melati from the Stockholm Environment Institute. It's in the chat box.
Chat box.
I can just, yeah, if you want, I can repeat it quickly. Perhaps you can.
I'll check with the. Okay, from for yeah. Kuntum for Stockholm. Yeah, environment. Yeah. Yeah, we do have a policy coherence toolkit also developed by the UN headquarters. We worked together, and national local the multi-scale platform. Yeah, there are in the policy coherence for the policy coherence. Yes, indeed there are competing interests and different priority indicators. So for the coordination of the different interests and their stakes, we need to form the stakeholder engagement framework between comprising all the stakeholders. So the communication is the most important factor in strengthening the coherency and ensuring the coherency, and also we should think about their so that they can feel ownership in the project. We should engage, not only just engage, they can decide, empower the stakeholders when we to decide the project and the policy directions. Then they can feel more empowered and get more bigger ownership. Then they can be champions of the policy or projects. So in the process, the toolkits are now posted on the UNPAN website. Might be, I think there are we developed. I think it was posted, but if it's not posted yet, it would can be posted sooner. So you can refer to the toolkit. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Bokin, for your excellent answer. Bernard, I know we are running out of time. I would have had one more question, if you allow me. Yeah, perfect. And this is a question to Kari Baiti Taoba, and it's a question related to sustainability of the project and multi-stakeholder platforms or engagement. It's a question from Roshan Shrestha. Is there an example of any effective mechanism of stakeholder platform that would still continue stakeholders engagement even after the project? So how do you ensure stakeholder engagement also after August 2021, when in your case the program is ending?
Throughout the project, the stakeholders have developed their own sustainability plan. But the idea now is to allow the stakeholders to own what came out from the project. For example, what I was talking about is the establishment of the resource recovery facility that is now being established, and it's the stakeholders who are managing that. So the facility is now being managed by the stakeholders to make sure that the waste is being looked after. Waste now is being, there are some recyclers who are working with the stakeholders to buy waste that can be recycled. So the ownership is now with the stakeholders whom we have been working throughout the project to maintain it once the project is closed. So the training now on those people who are going to manage that facility, and at the same time, the stakeholders to continue that work with the Nasinu Town Council. They've been made to feel and to own up so that we can slowly close the project and they can continue with that. Hopefully that answers the question.
Excellent. Yes. Back to you, Bernard.
Great, and I think that's a fantastic note to end the Q&A on, talking about sustainability and really a fantastic story from the Pacific about how you build that and then they continue it after the project. So thank you all attendees for your questions. I'm really pleased we had a very good portion of time for Q&A and some really interesting questions. You know, we heard about the challenges faced in Korea. We talked about the process of engaging everybody, government, private sector in Indonesia, success indicators in the Pacific and across the villages in Indonesia, some of the advantages of engagement. We heard in Indonesia about COVID-19 measures, also policy coherence, making sure those different levels of government, how they should be acting, and then ending up with sustainability. So if we were all in person, I'm sure we'd be giving a very warm round of applause to our three panelists. Let me thank them again, Director Shim, Ibu Harlina, Ms. Taoba. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, and thank you all the attendees for your great questions. Really fascinating roundtable. And Ms. Taoba, I'm going to quote you one last time. So we have the journey. This is the destination we've now reached, which is the end of the fourth roundtable. So now we'd like to turn to DG Carrasco to sum up and provide some closing comments. So thank you again, everybody, and over to you, DG.
Thank you very much, Bernard. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Wonderful. So distinguished panelists, colleagues from the OECD, UNDP, Development Partners Network on Decentralization and Local Governance, ADB, and dear participants. On behalf of the organizing team, I am delighted to deliver the concluding remarks of this series of roundtables on localizing the Sustainable Development Goals. I was able to join various sessions today, yesterday, and on Monday. And I did observe the tremendous commitment to this agenda on the part of all the presenters and panelists. And this was great to see. Subnational governments are at the front line as first responders to rapid urbanization, climate change, with differentiated, of course, localized impacts, as well as external shocks such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Their proximity to affected communities means that subnational governments play a fundamental role in delivering services as well as economic development and public investment. The OECD UCLG's World Observatory on Subnational Finance and Investment Data has highlighted that that substantial amount of public spending and investment in sectors such as health, education, social protection, water supply, and environment and climate change, which contribute directly to the Sustainable Development Goals, take place at the subnational government level. So without meaningful engagement and tangible contributions by the subnational governments, achieving the SDGs by 2030 will remain an elusive dream. This discourse on localizing the SDGs is hence timely and necessary. In the last 4 days, 4 enablers for localizing SDGs were discussed through 4 panel discussions. The panel discussion on the first day focused on policy coherence and institutional development in multi-level governance. The interactions highlighted that for subnational governments to contribute meaningfully to the SDGs, certain requirements need to be in place. These include 1, a strong legal framework with clear functional assignments and authorities among all government tiers. 2, the allocation of resources that are commensurate with the mandates of the SNGs. 3, good implementation strategies and guidelines. 4, investments and plans for strengthening strengthening operational efficiencies of local public institutions through digitalization of systems and capacity development. And finally, 5, platforms for effective coordination among government tiers and other stakeholders. Overcoming silos, which we seem to be hearing quite regularly, and leveraging the interdependence of sectors were also emphasized. The discussion reinforced that to put these requirements in place, adequate financial resources as well as political commitment are key, which in fact set the context for the panel 2 discussion on financing. The need for billions of dollars to achieve the SDGs has been underlined time and again by different studies. The importance of strategic thinking and prompt actions for exploring and mobilizing diversified financing sources and forging strategic partnerships are some of the reiterated messages we are taking away from our panel discussion on the second day. Despite the strong involvement of SNGs in areas that underlie SDGs, enabling fiscal frameworks are not in place in many countries in Asia and the Pacific. Fiscal decentralization systems should therefore be improved through grants and tax reforms, optimization and innovation, and here we can think of the land value capture instruments, and equalization mechanisms to provide more fiscal space at the subnational level to finance the SDGs. While public resource could be increased through these measures, public resources alone would not be sufficient to finance the SDGs. Partnerships with private sector and increasingly philanthropic organizations need to be proactively explored. We heard some examples of how subnational governments have been managing to tap into such resources, and we do think that it is in a promising area. On the other hand, to learn that it is not always the lack of resources, but policy and institutional barriers that prevent funds flowing to subnational governments is also quite revealing. We have noted that understanding and analyzing the interlinkages among policies, institutional capacity, incentive mechanisms, and financing is necessary to determine effective strategies for mobilizing and making resources available to subnational governments. We have three main takeaways from the panel discussion on the third day, which focused on a very interesting area of data and monitoring. First, multilateral organizations like ADB, UNDP, and the OECD have developed innovative systems of data collection for SDGs, which could be publicly accessed and used for evidence-based policymaking and formulating appropriate strategies and plans to achieve the SDGs. Second, non-conventional data collection methods such as those led by civil society or community organizations could indeed complement well with conventional methods such as those led by the national statistical offices. While state-run data systems often cannot collect data sets that are comprehensively disaggregated and granular, community-based monitoring systems have been proven to be capable of collecting such granular data, which not only contributes to voluntary national reviews, but also enriches policy analysis. By combining data collected through conventional and non-conventional systems, the issue is brought to bear. We also want to recognize that innovative tools that facilitate data exchange across countries and partners, including through ADB's system, and those with visualization capacity, such as those under the OECD system, are already available for a richer analysis and better tracking of SDGs. More stakeholders need to be aware about the existence and accessibility of such innovative tools. There are also calls for more cooperation in statistics across Asia and the Pacific, including at the community level. Moreover, the ability to understand and use data is often weak in many countries. Knowledge sharing, therefore, and capacity development are very important, and they set the context for the fourth and last panel discussion today on multi-stakeholder engagement, partnerships, and knowledge sharing. The examples that were presented today have shown the importance of a whole of society approach to localizing the SDGs, the wealth of experience and knowledge that would be harnessed, and the abundance of information and materials that are publicly available. The social innovation platforms that Indonesia is implementing with UNDP shows that there are indeed new solutions to co-design and particularly co-design local development portfolios and de-risk public and private investments. The example from the Pacific on advancing the localization agenda through multi-stakeholder coalitions is truly fascinating and serves as an important learning opportunity for many. Mechanisms and platforms to share these knowledge and information are important, but even more crucial is the capacity of locally elected representatives, public officials, and other development practitioners, including civil society organizations, to make use of such information and apply the knowledge gained. By working together and forging strategic partnerships, such sharing and capacity development activities could be better realized. We therefore need to invest our time, effort, and resources into expanding our partnerships, promoting multi-stakeholder engagement, and facilitating knowledge sharing and capacity development. In fact, this series of roundtables embodies the notable partnerships among multilateral development organizations, a knowledge network, governments, global associations, and civil society organizations. This is truly what partnership is about. I would like to thank all the panel members who gave their valuable time and shared with us excellent learning and experience, which benefited hundreds of people. As per our records, we had a total of more than 800 people from over 36 countries who participated in the Roundtable series. This is so impressive. I would also like to thank the moderators for their time and undertaking an important role of moderation. Finally, turning to the thank you part, let me begin by thanking the organizing team of these roundtables, Patrick Duong from the UNDP Regional Office in Bangkok, Dr. Alain Dupré and Isabelle Chatry from the OECD, Christian Louis from the DLOG Secretariat, Rachana, Tony, Ali, and Abigail, who I'm always grateful to from ADB's dedicated governance thematic group, Rainer Rodewald, and of course, ADB's information technology and event management teams for the fantastic job in successfully organizing these important roundtables. I do hope that there will be many more such events in the future to share knowledge and continue the strong partnership to jointly take forward this important agenda of localizing the SDGs. We are very pleased that UNDP is considering to host a similar online event next year with ADB, DLOG, and OECD. On that note, let me thank you very much and have a pleasant day or evening. Thank you.
Right? So we can say bye to each other then. Hello. So that's the end of our.
Well
Bye,
done.
everyone.
Yes,
It was a
bye-bye.
pleasure
It was
from
great.
UNDP.
Thank you.
Ah,
Very
Thank you
much.
to all.
oh,
Patrick,
thank you, Bruno.
appreciate it. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. To show my face a little bit.
Yeah. Hello, Bruno. Nice to
Okay.
meet you, to see you. Okay.
All the very best. Thank you very much for all your contributions. It's
Thank you
really
very
great.
much to you. And thank you to ADB for the great organization, and to Ashana. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
And to the participants.
And to the participants, of course.
It's good to
Bye.
catch up again. Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Bruno.
Bye. Chris. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you po.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Hi.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Miss Ali, Miss Tony.
Thank you rin. Thank you sa lahat.